Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Happy Monday, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
Here we are about to tell you about things you might want to think about saying. Far be it for us to tell you what words to use or what to say, but we're going to try. But we will sometimes like to do some, food for thought. And I think that this is important food for thought when you're working with children and families.
Right.
I had, and I'll tell you what first, a long time ago inspired this thought, and then it took time for us to put it together and record it. When I teach college classes and I'm reading papers, I'm always flagging one particular word in my students' papers and saying, in academic writing, we don't use this word. And it's a word that has become part of our everyday talk. You have heard me say it many times on this podcast. You have heard Alison say it. You probably say it.
You say it. Yeah.
And yet it's not considered part of formal writing. And I one day kind of wonder why. I know that I'm supposed to make this correction, and why is that? And I found some very interesting information. That word is kids.
Yeah.
My students use it all the time when they're writing. I flag it and say, please use child or children in academic writing. We don't use the word kids in formal writing. I dug into it just a little bit, and I learned some interesting things. One is that it's diminishing, that it diminishes children when we should be building children up and believing in them, and that it sort of has the intonation of you are less than, so we don't want people formally calling children that. Another reason was super interesting to me, that in some cultures, in some languages, the word kids is an insult.
Yeah.
And so we don't know whose culture we are pinging with this word. I read a very interesting piece where it was talking about people in other countries, and they were asking them about certain words. Kids was one of them. And they asked them about it. And there were people who said, oh, that's used much more in the States.
It is. Because I feel like I never even realized that the word kids was what, like, I knew not to use it in writing, like Cindy's saying, like it's not a professional way to refer to children in writing, but I never thought to not call kids, children kids, because in the United States, it's almost like an interchangeable word, it seems. You could say children or you could say kids, and it's just quicker to say kids,
Well, it is interchangeable in our culture, but that's not true in every culture.
Not in every culture. And if you work with a lot of different cultures, then you probably want to try to eliminate this word, because you don't know if you're insulting them by saying it. I also
never want to say anything that diminishes children. That's not my job.
That's true too. Yeah.
I have been making a very conscious effort not to use the word when I provide professional development. When I'm having conversations about children and their development or anything in my professional life, I have tried very hard not to use it. And I can share with you all that it takes conscious effort.
It really does, because I've been trying, and it's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Because we're so used to it. But I think
it's part of our language,
a worthy exercise. How about that?
Absolutely.
If in academic writing it is not proper to use the word kids, then it's also not proper to use that word in your communications that are professional, like Alison said, like communications with families, for example, is a formal communication, and we should not be using that word. It's in a professional situation.
Yeah.
And one of the things that can get us to stop using that word is not using that word at all.
Not using it. And I think it can be done, because I've eliminated some words from my vocabulary over the past couple years, and I don't even think to use them anymore. It just takes time and practice and a conscious effort to do it. So I think we can eliminate this. You just have to try. You have to really make an effort. It's hard because we're just so used to using that word.
I think at the very least, when we're talking with families, we want to be consciously using the word child or children.
Yes. Yes.
It's better. There
Yeah.
are definitely other words I've eliminated from
Mm-hmm.
the things that I say. I even try in my life, I try not to say things that sort of flippantly use words that are serious diagnoses for other people. And I can
Yes.
give you a few examples. I think we sometimes are tone deaf and we don't
Yeah.
realize we're using these words or phrases that are very serious for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And I can give you an example from the adult world and then an example maybe that might have more to do with your conversation centered around children. In the adult world, in my adult life, I have worked really hard to eliminate saying things like, "Oh, she's crazy." I
Yeah.
there are people who really struggle with mental health. That
Yeah.
is not something to be flippant about. And crazy is a derogatory term for those people who struggle with mental illness. And I have
Right.
tried really, really hard to eliminate it. Again, it's not easy.
Yeah. It's not easy, especially that word crazy, because that could, it is insulting to people who struggle with mental health. But I think also in our language, the word crazy has multiple meanings, sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's hard to eliminate it, but I think we should try really hard to eliminate that word entirely when referring to people.
Yeah. I can
you
tell you how
know?
I replaced it. I try to remember, instead
Yeah.
of using that, to use the word outrageous.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good replacement, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah. I like
And
that.
there are a couple of other words, but the one outrageous comes to me immediately that I've
Yeah.
tried to replace it with.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is um, that is beyond the pale. That is
Yeah.
outrageous. That is
That's
how I want to actually
yeah.
use adjectives that are not insulting to people.
Right.
Similarly, I think there are certain things we say very flippantly without thinking about the fact that people struggle with this.
Yeah.
One of them would be OCD,
Yes. So I
or
think people
oppositional defiant
defiant
disorder is another
disorder
one.
or ADHD. I
ADA,
think,
well, yeah, we use it
but I think
flippantly.
people, yeah, I think people are using it flippantly. I think people are saying, "Oh, you're so OCD." Okay, like if I check my stove one time before I leave my house, I'm like, "Oh, you're being so OCD." No, OCD is not a way to describe somebody. That is a diagnosis that, in order for me to be or to have OCD, I need to get that diagnosed and evaluated. It's not just because I checked my door locks before I left my house does not mean I'm OCD. Maybe say she's being very careful. She's being very cautious. I do not have a diagnosis just for one thing that I might do, or same thing with ADHD. Like, I feel like if adults are like, oh, she's not paying attention, oh, look, she's being impulsive, oh, she's so ADHD today. It's like, no, I can't be ADHD just today. Like, if you have that diagnosis, you have ADHD for your whole life. Like, it's not something that could be turned on and off. And I don't think we should be referring it to something that can be turned on and off, because the people who are actually diagnosed with that cannot turn it off. And
And
suggesting that it can be turned
right,
off is insulting.
you're right.
You
And
know?
why are we labeling people who don't have a diagnosis?
Right.
There's got to be better ways to do this.
Yeah.
Children who say no or don't want to do things or do the opposite of what you want, they don't all have oppositional
Oppositional
defiance
defiant.
disorder.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not all ODD.
Yeah.
That, again, it's a diagnosis and it's a serious
Yes.
thing. And there are people who have to work their way through these
Yeah.
diagnoses with a lot of help. And I don't think that
Well,
that's
I also
something
think
that's,
it makes it seem like it's not okay for a child to ever say no to you. And I'm sorry, they're allowed to say no to you.
yes, they
Okay.
are. Yes,
And
they
just
are.
because they said no to something that you suggested does not mean they have a diagnosis. It means they don't want to do that right now. And they're allowed to, as a person, say, I don't want to do that right now. That doesn't mean they have an entire disorder. And it shouldn't be suggested that they do.
And sometimes we have to honor their no.
Yes, we
Sometimes when a child
should.
says no, we need to honor it so that they
Yes.
understand that they have some autonomy, they have some
Yes.
independence, they can think for themselves.
Yeah.
When you're working with children and they say no to you, really the work is to figure out, is there a way that
Yeah.
we can do this differently? Is there a
Right.
way, does this child need a few minutes and then maybe would be willing? Like, what
Right.
do we
I
do
think
with that? No is the
you need to
question.
figure out,
We've got other episodes
yeah.
about this.
Oh, yeah. You need to figure out the why. Why did they
Yeah.
say no? And then you could really change the whole situation
Yeah.
there. Like, once you know the why, yeah.
It's a whole other
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Uh, Alice and I were both talking about, before we started recording, a couple of other words and phrases that we have pretty much eliminated. When I look at a group of children, I don't call them boys and girls anymore. Just like when I'm working with adults and teaching adults, I don't say ladies and gentlemen anymore.
Yes. Yes. And I don't think we should be. You know, I don't think that's. I've eliminated boys and girls a couple
Have
years
you
ago.
completely?
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. Like I don't do like I don't even like I used to do like activities of like, okay, let's put all the boys in this category and all the girls in like sorting like I don't do that anymore. Yeah, no, I don't do that. No, 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 no. And I know there's people out there still doing it. Don't do it. I totally eliminated the entire thing. Like I haven't used it in at least a couple years here.
So what do you
Like I
call
don't.
them? What do you call the children?
Children. I call them
Do
children.
you?
How many children are here? Yeah, I don't. Yeah, or sometimes I'll say, "Oh, she's a male," or "He's a male, she's a female, male, female." I don't even know if that's the proper term,
I
but
don't
no,
know
I
if that's
don't.
right either.
I don't know, but I
Um,
usually just say children. She's another child.
like
I
if you're
try not to
gathering
refer to them
them,
at all.
if you're
Oh, if
gathering
I'm
them or trying to get
gathering
their
them,
attention. Hmm.
oh yeah, like we're all going to meet at the rug because it used to. A lot of people say boys and girls, all right, come to the rug.
Yeah.
I used to say friends. Okay, friends, come to the rug
That's
because I
the
thought
other
that was.
one we eliminated.
I don't do that anymore either. Okay, yeah, because we're
They're
not all
not your
friends here.
friends. They're
They're
not your
not my
friend. They're your
friends, and
student.
even within that group, they might not be friends. So what I usually like to call them, like usually your classroom will have some sort of name, right? So my last classroom was preschool puppies. And so I'd say preschool puppies come here. My current room does not have a name. It's just room 3. So I'd be like room 3 children. Yeah, they don't have
Room
names in this
3,
room, in this
hello.
school. Yeah,
Actually,
room
now that
3
I think
children.
about it, I
Yeah,
work with a program where they go by room,
yeah.
right?
There
And
is
they
no
do, they'll
names.
say to them, okay, room 5, let's get it
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
That's what they do.
Room
Hmm.
3. You know, we're all gonna. Everybody in room 3. We're gonna gather here. My last school, I all the classrooms had names, like, and you could name them. You know, we were the preschool puppies. I'd be like, okay, puppies, come on, we're going. You know, like all preschool puppies on the rug. All preschool puppies were going outside. All preschool puppies line up. Because then it was more of like, I guess, a group. Like, oh, I'm a puppy, or I'm in room 3. I need
Yeah, but
to.
they know their room
They
number.
know.
Like if
They
you go
know.
by room
Yeah.
numbers, they know. I remember in that
Yeah.
one program, the teacher would gather them together, or she used to like to do affirmations and cheers and stuff.
Yeah.
And at the end of large group time in the morning, she would be like, "Who's a great group of children?" And they would say 4s, and they were room 4.
Yeah, they were
4s.
room
They
4.
weren't 4
Yeah.
years old, by the way. They were not.
No.
They
No.
were younger. They were
Yeah.
3, but they would be like
Yeah.
the 4s because they knew they were room 4.
Yeah.
And that is how she called them. So you
Yeah.
can consider doing something like that. You know, the thing is, we never know what families are teaching their children, what children are seeing or experiencing outside of our rooms. And because of that, we want to eliminate things like stereotype. And I don't want to add stereotype, and I don't want to add labels. And I want, however families experience life outside of my setting, I want whatever I do to be pretty neutral, so that whatever they experience outside isn't negated, or the children don't start to think that what they're doing with their families is somehow wrong or no good, if it's just family preference for how they operate through the world with things like gender. And there's a tool that I teach people to use, and it has some questionnaires, and in the questionnaires, they were written a long time ago, so they still have things that could be the opposite of what families believe about gender and gender roles. And during this training, when I'm training people, I have to let them know that these questionnaires may have things that families that do not correlate with families' beliefs about certain things, and one of those is gender. Not only gender, but one of those is gender, and that the families can opt out of that part. So we have to, our obligation as early educators is to partner with families. Part of partnering with families is respecting what everyone teaches. And if I'm going to respect what everyone teaches, I have to steer clear of certain things that could be different than what I'm used to. That's
Yeah.
all. Steering clear is saying to the children, okay, room 6, let's go.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I also, and you briefly mentioned friends.
Yeah.
And I know I had an influence over this with you.
Yes.
when I tell people all the time, please stop gathering them by calling them friends. It's not true. They're not your friend. They're your class or your students or the children you work with. That's who they are. And they are not necessarily all friends with each other. And that's okay. They just have to be kind to each other.
Yeah, because I think I used to say that, like, in conversations, like if there was a dispute about something, I'd be like, oh, well, we don't treat our friends like that. And then I started thinking, like, but they might not be friends.
They don't like each other.
So now I use classmate. Like, you don't treat your classmate that way, because they are in the same class and they are classmates, but they don't necessarily have to be friends. They are certainly, and they shouldn't be expected to be friends. Like, you're not going to be friends with every single person in every single room for the rest of your life. But you do need to know how to get along with people and to work with them cordially, so I feel like that's maybe a better thing, because I don't treat my friends like that, but I might be enemies with you. So I might treat my enemy like that, so you got to refer to them a little differently so that they understand, like, okay, we're in the same room and we're in this group together for the entire school year. And I don't treat the person that I'm in a group with like that. There has to be respect here.
I also think that we have to confer with people sometimes about what they do.
Yeah.
And here's an example of why I say that. For a while there was this belief or trend that we need to use people first language. So if we're talking about someone with autism, that we would, the respectful way to say that is that is a person on the spectrum of autism or a child on the spectrum of autism. There are many people in the autistic community who object to that, who say, you should call me autistic. That's what I am. Just like some people are left-handed, some people are right-handed. I'm autistic. It's something that I was born with. That's part of my biology. That's part of me. And there's this wonderful young woman on Instagram. She was on Love on the Spectrum on Netflix. And she has a terrific Instagram where she educates us all about learning disabilities and autism, things that are part of her life. And she talks about the fact that she does not like people first language, and that if you have to say I'm a person first, that's intrinsically a problem, because it's obvious that you generally don't see us as people if you feel the need to say it first. So I'm going to look on my Instagram and tell you her name. I'm going to shout her out. She is fantastic. Maybe we'll tag her and let her know we shout, or I'll send her a message and just say, I just want you to know I shouted you out. I think your Instagram is absolutely fantastic. Let's see. Her name is Kaylin. Kaelynnvp is her Instagram. Her Instagram, whatever it's called, label, name tag. I don't know. And she's wonderful. So thank you, Kaylin, for educating the entire world. And she makes such a great point when she says certain things, and that was one of them. Like, why, you don't call me a person
who has curly hair
is a person who you say Cindy has curly hair. Or Cindy's hair is curly. You don't. Obviously, I'm a person.
Yeah, I'm a brown-haired woman. I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like, of course, you usually would put it say it that way instead of saying she's a person with brown hair. You know what I mean? Like,
we say that people are things like diabetic.
Yes, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
She's diabetic, or I'm diabetic. I don't. At any rate, there are some people who are fine with it. That sort of language.
It's okay.
So you have to ask.
Just ask them. It's okay to ask people, what would you like to be referred by? How would you like me to refer to you? Yes.
Or your child. When you're working with young children, you just say to the family, if you know that the child or their sibling or someone in the family has a diagnosis of autism, then you just say to the family, do you like person first language or not? How would you
Or
like
not.
me to speak?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know why we are so hesitant to say to people, how would you like me to speak about you, your
Well,
child,
yeah,
your
I think we're getting there where we're getting better about asking people, especially with gender terms, like what would you like to be
maybe.
referred, but, so maybe this, I mean, we're getting there with that a little bit. We're making steps forward there, so maybe there'll be steps forward for the autistic community and special needs, and
Where we
this
say
people
to them, what do
first.
you
Yeah,
prefer?
what would you
Like
prefer to be called?
there
Yeah,
are people who say, please don't call my needs special needs. I have a learning disability. There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with having a disability.
yeah,
It's okay
yeah.
to be differently abled.
Yes,
I don't like people.
I
I
read.
know several people who are like, please, special needs. That phrase drives me nuts. My child
Yeah.
has a learning disability.
Well, I read a whole article where a woman doesn't like having her learning disability classified as a disability because it makes it seem like there's something
It's a different
wrong.
ability,
It's a different. She's differently abled, I think is how she
right?
describes it. I'm differently abled. She said saying she's disabled makes it seem like she can't do anything, like she is not
That's true.
capable of doing anything. And
That's
she
true.
goes, I am capable of doing everything that you're capable of doing. I just do it differently, as we all do. That's why she was like, I don't understand. Like you would do something differently than, like, I would do it differently than Cindy.
Hmm.
So, but that doesn't mean I have a disability. We're just different. So why is hers considered a disability?
I don't
And
know. I just think we
I
have
get
to
it.
start to say to people, what do you want?
What do
I
you
just said
want?
drives me
Yeah.
nuts. I probably shouldn't even say that. I'm going to call myself out. I need to be careful about
Yeah.
saying
It's
stuff like that.
driving me nuts. Yeah.
Right? We got to be
Yeah.
careful
Yeah.
because, it's not our intent to put
Right.
families off or children off ever. And you have to mind what you say.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you have to mind what you say and be aware of what's coming out of your mouth. And as you can see, you can just easily, like I just did, you can just easily
Easily.
say things
Yeah.
without thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there are these older words that we don't have much time left, but we're just going to remind you that these are outdated terms. We don't use them anymore. We don't call girls tomboys, for
Tomboys.
example.
Yeah.
What are some other ones like that? Can you think of any that are outdated?
I sometimes think drama queen is outdated
Yeah,
because it makes it
please.
seem like
Mhm.
first off, we're not allowed to be. I think that needs to go. Drama queen. Plus, it's very like, oh, it's always woman based. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like that. Was there another one I thought I said before we caught on, but I forget now. But yeah, I feel like there's no reason to be calling anybody a tomboy or a drama queen or any of these things. Like, that's just who they are as a person. So what if you're a woman who likes sports or likes to go do things that boys like to typically do? Like, we're people. We're
Mhm.
allowed to like what we like, no matter what our gender is. Like, there's no need to label me in that way.
Right.
I
So,
just don't like
we
that.
always try to land on advice. So here's our advice. Our advice goes way back to the beginning of this episode and the title. Mind what you say.
Mind what you say.
Just
Or start paying
think about
attention.
the
Yeah.
impact it can have on other people and the
Yeah.
lives of other people. Do the best you can. All of us sometimes say things that we realize, oh, that was a little poorly said or phrased.
Yeah. And you can always go back and say,
so
hey,
you learn. You live and you learn.
Yeah, you can always go back and apologize for that. What you say,
Yeah.
hey, I said that the other day and I didn't mean,
I shouldn't have said that.
I'm trying to eliminate that from my vocabulary or my conversation, like, I apologize and just move on.
It takes time to break habits.
It takes
like
time.
that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think when you know, the more you know, right? Isn't that the phrase?
Yes,
The more you know.
the more you know.
The more you become aware and the more someone says to you, just think about the things you say and the impact it can have or the way it can be taken by other people. It makes you think more about the things you say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'm not embarrassed to say. I'm not embarrassed to shout out a couple of places where we have had a lot of listeners in the past week or so. Many, many listeners. These are in the United States and in the world. These are places that we have generally shouted out before. So we're gonna get more to the nitty gritty. For example, we have shouted out California before. Yes. Beautiful state. And now we're going to shout out one place in California. And I have been there, and I can tell you it is just a wonderful place to visit. It is so beautiful and fun and terrific. And that is Santa Monica.
Yay. Hi, Santa
Thank you
Monica.
thank you for listening, Santa Monica, down there at the end of Route 66. We thank you for listening, and make sure to tell the people in your surrounding area and that whole LA County kind of area where you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was in that area, I stayed in Long Beach. I was there for a conference before the pandemic, and I stayed in Long Beach, but we went all over the area and loved Santa Monica.
Nice.
And the place in the world, see, we're doing this backwards. We did the United
We are. We
States
usually
first.
do it. Yeah.
We do it the other way. The place in the world that we have shouted out in the past is Japan. Japan is back in our top 3, particularly Tokyo.
Oh, hi, Tokyo.
I would, one of my
I'd be glad to
sons is
visit
always
there.
talking about wanting to go visit Japan and Tokyo. I can definitely see why. Maybe someday. I
Yeah.
have not been there, so
No,
maybe
I've never been
someday.
there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, preschool peeps, have a wonderful, I think, Thanksgiving. This one
Thanksgiving
releases,
is
right?
coming out. Yeah, this comes out, I
Thanksgiving's
think, the
coming.
Monday
If you're
before
in the United
Thanksgiving.
States,
Yeah.
have a wonderful Thanksgiving. If you are not, we know you're thankful anyway if you're not in the United States.
Yeah.
And we know that you probably think all the time about what you're thankful for anyhow. So I hope everyone enjoys a day when they can think about being grateful.
Being
And we will
grateful.
catch you next time on the podcast.
Bye, peeps.
Bye, everybody.